good evening. Welcome to our Level 2 Introduction to Bookkeeping revision session. Tonight we are going to be looking at task 4, and this builds on, for those of you that looked at the session last week, we looked at task 3. We are still working on the customer transaction side of things, our sales ledger stuff, whereas with task 3 you're looking at creating sales documentation, so invoices, credit notes, doing the calculations for that. What we're going to be doing tonight is looking at the sort of receipts side of things, when we're receiving money in from customers and what we do, making sure that we're checking it and all that sort of thing. So we're going to get diving right in to a little task briefing. There's not a lot on this because it's very practical task, so it's not regurgitating information necessarily, they're physically doing the things, and you will need your calculator tonight. So I've got mine, so let's have a quick look. So as we were saying, we are looking at processing of customer transactions, but we're now looking at processing receipts and checking for accuracy. So that's what we're looking at tonight. It's another 10 marker. They pretty much have all been 10 markers so far, so you're looking at around 9 minutes needed. And I hope that when you've had a look through this, you can look and go, yeah, I could do that in 9 minutes, not a problem. So we will be having to look at quite a few different documents and be familiar with quite a few different documents for this task. Obviously, we're going to be thinking about information about sales invoices and credit notes. It might be that we have invoice numbers and credit note numbers that we need to be familiar with, and the amounts relating to those. So it's not necessarily an invoice or credit note in detail, but obviously you need to be familiar with what those documents do. What comes in now as a new document that we haven't necessarily seen in detail yet is the remittance advice. So this is the document that your customer, when they pay you, will either, if they're going to pay by cheque, which isn't very common now, they usually send a remittance advice with the cheque, or they may send it and email it over to you when they make an online payment via Bax. And what that remittance advice does is it shows what's being paid. Okay. So basically, which invoices, which credit notes, etc. So that then it's much easier for us at our end on the sales ledger side of things, the receivables ledger side of things. Sorry, I should use the correct terminology for this version. We can match it up really easily on our system, and then we can sort of see, if they're saying, well, we've cleared our account in full on that payment, and we go, well, we don't think so. We can start to get that detective work going, and we're going to have a look at questions like that as well. Discounts also come back on this task, so it might be that you're asked about the different types of discounts, so trade, bulk, prompt payment, and it might be that, on a question, the customer might have taken a prompt payment discount, for example, because they think they've paid within the early settlement period, but actually they haven't, and then you might have to look at what's the difference and what they should have paid and stuff like that. We haven't got a task like that tonight, but it might come up. So when we do get that payment from the customer, which we also can call a receipt, we want to make sure that the amount that they have paid is correct. Yep. So we will review that customer's account. We will say, yep, that matches, or probably what's more likely, that doesn't match. Have they paid too much? Have they paid too little? And if they've not paid what we were expecting, what's missing? Yeah, and we're going to have a look at a question like that shortly. Okay. If they have sent us the wrong amount, then we need to chase that up with them. So it might be that you might be asked about that in like a sort of true false thing of what would we do, and you select one of the options out of the statements. But we would obviously chase that up with them and just say, oh, this invoice was missing from your payment. Why is that? The other thing that we might have to do with identifying errors is we might have to compare two documents. It might be that you might be given, I don't know, your receivables, your customer's account, for example, and a remittance advice, and you've got to compare the two to work out what's missing on a particular payment, or maybe they've paid an invoice that you've then they've not got a credit note or something like that. So it's very much being methodical, checking things through, and you can have, you know, underpayments where they've not paid enough, overpayments where they've paid too much, incorrect discounts, like, as I say, like we talked about before, where they've taken a prompt payment discount when they shouldn't have. And it also might be that some of the transactions are, you know, there's a transaction missing or duplicated, which has led to this overpayment or underpayment. Okay, and then in order to, you might also be asked to correct those errors, work out not only work out what is missing, but then how much the customer has to pay. So it might be that you're having to correctly calculate things like the discount that's been applied. So again, if they've taken a prompt payment discount that they weren't supposed to because they've paid too late, what they should have paid, you might need to work out the prompt payment discount portion on that needs to be added on. Again, we haven't got much on discounts tonight, but I'm just warning it could come up. The other thing that you might be given is you might be given a remittance advice that's maybe only got partial information on it. They might just say we've paid, I don't know, £2,000 in full receipt of our bill, of our account, sorry. And then we might have to allocate those amounts correctly. It might be that they've given you a remittance and then they said, like, you know, well, we're paying this invoice in full, we're paying this invoice partly, and you have to then allocate that across and then work out what the closing balance is for any money that is outstanding, which would then may lead to a later discussion. But you wouldn't need to do that in the task, but yeah, so you've got various things that could crop up on this. There's more than one way that they can test whether you know what you're doing with allocating receipts from customers. So I think we'll get cracking, and we're going to have a look at a question. So task 4, here we go. So let's get the highlighter out. We'll highlight the information that we need. So on the 31st of May, Mojo Limited, so that's us, we're Mojo Limited, we received a cheque from a customer, Cosmopolitan Limited, so they're our customer, for £2,300 in full settlement of their outstanding account balance. So what does that mean? That means that according to Cosmopolitan at their end, they've looked at what they've got on the system that's come from us in terms of invoices and credit notes and what they've maybe paid previously. And they think that they had £2,300 outstanding. They've sent us that money and they think that they now have nothing outstanding from us that they need to pay. So that's great. We've had that money. We need to do something with it. So the first thing that we can look at is our own. So this is their account in our receivables ledger. So we remember with our receivables ledger, every customer has their own account, and that's where we record all the ins and outs of their dealings with us. Okay. So we've got invoices and the previous balance on the debit side here. And then on the credit side, we've got some credit notes, and they've also previous payments and that sort of thing. So what is the first thing that what's the first thing that you would do when you've got this information? Because we've got some questions to answer here. So we need to know about documents, we need to know about payments, etc. So let's have a look at what we've got. So first one, and I'm hoping this will be a nice, easy one to start with. What document should Cosmopolitan Limited have included with the cheque? And this is where you need to pick from. So we've got purchase order, invoice, delivery note, or remittance advice note. Which one is our document? Indeed, we talked about it in the task briefing. I can see that it's popped up on the chat. It's our remittance advice, and I'll give its full name, remittance advice note, but you might just see it as a remittance advice, which is fine. Okay, so now we need to get into the meat of the information. So it says, is the cheque for £2,300, is it an overpayment or an underpayment? Okay, so we've either got to put overpayment or underpayment. Okay. We also need to have a look at whether we do a bit of calculations on our side to do this. So let's go back to what they've paid. They've paid £2,300. What is the balance What do we think their balance is on their account? Any thoughts on that? That's where the calculators come in. I will talk through how we would how I would approach this, just to see if anybody's got any thoughts. I'll start doing it now. So how do we calculate what the current balance is? First of all, I would add up each side individually. So add up the debit side, add up the credit side, and see what the amount is on each. So debit side, we've got quite a lot. I make that the debit side is £6,300. Yeah. And then we'll do the same for the credit side. So we've got 2,500. Yeah. So we've issued invoices to them of £6,300 in May, plus some from previously. And in May, they have had credit notes and they've done another payment to us of £2,500. So what's the difference between the two amounts here? Because that's how we'll get our balance. Yeah. So if we say, right, balance is 6,300 minus 2,500 gives us what? Anyone want to give it a go? I'll do it. So we reckon that they should be paying us £3,800. Thank you. Yeah, I saw someone doing it in the chat. So they've paid £2,300. Is it an underpayment or an overpayment, given that we think they should have paid £3,800? It is. Well done. It's an underpayment. Yeah, they've paid less than we thought they should have. Okay. So the next bit is what we've got to work out what the discrepancy relates to. So which, is there an invoice or a credit note? I can see that people are working this out in the chat, but I'll explain how we do this. What does the discrepancy appear to relate to and how much is it? So our balance, I'm just going to explain how we do this. So our balance was 3,800. They've paid 2,300. So if we work out the difference between those two, that will then maybe help us to do our detective work and work out which invoice or credit note, or might be more than one, has been missed. So if we do 3,800 minus the 2,300, we get 1,500. So what I would then do, that's what's left, that's what they need to pay. So have we got anything on our account that links to that £1,500? Yeah, straight away jumps out. Yeah, I can see people have picked this up in the chat. 15th of May, invoice 346 is for £1,500. There might be an issue with that particular sale for whatever reason, but they haven't paid it. Yeah, so we can see that from the pick list it says, you know, which one of those hasn't been done. So we can say invoice 346 hasn't been paid. Okay, and then how much they need to pay, that is the missing invoice amount, so it'd be £1,500. Yeah, so this is another one of those questions, and we've got more bits to do on this, where you need to be methodical. So you need to be looking at, you know, what you've got on one side versus what's on the other. What should they have paid? What have they paid? Be methodical with it, and I think it shouldn't be too tricky. Right, we've got a knowledge question now. So it says that Mojo Limited offers its customers a 2% discount if they make payment within 14 days. So then we've got to fill in the gap of this sentence. It says Mojo offers its customers a blank discount if they make payment within 14 days. What type of discount is it? Is it a trade discount or a prompt payment discount? Fantastic, it is a prompt payment discount. Unfortunately, my writing is a bit too big, so I had to put it across 2 lines, but yeah, well done. Yeah, trade discount is to encourage regular custom. Prompt payment discount is to encourage early payment. and bulk discount is to encourage purchasing in high quantities, if you needed that one as well. Right, now this next question is quite an interesting one because it tests whether you know what goes where on the receivables ledger control account. You might also know it's the sales ledger control account. The terminology changes quite a bit. So the trainee accountant has entered the following debits and credits for a new customer in the receivables ledger. State if they are correct or incorrect. So we have to, for this, decide whether, you know, that they've debited, they've put 3 debit entries in here, have they done the right thing based on the type of transaction? Yeah. So if we think about our, I'm just going to give this a bit of a thing. If we think about our receivables ledger control account, it's an asset account. Okay, and then I don't want to go too much into double entry because we're not quite there yet. It's coming. With asset accounts, we increase on the debit side. So if we've got more of those types of transactions that would increase the balance, maybe more customers have bought things from us, those extra buyings will, no, buyings isn't a word, but you know what I mean, that will be a debit entry to increase the balance on the account. Anything that reduces the balance on the account, so it might be that customers have given us money, or we maybe have to give them some discounts, or they've returned some things, they would be a credit. So has the trainee accountant done the right thing? So there's been a sales invoice that's been issued, there's been a payment by the customer, and there's also been a sales credit note issued. So by debiting the receivables ledger control account with the amount for the new sales invoice, have they done the right thing? Yes or no? Have they put it on the right side of the receivables ledger control account? They've put it here. Yeah. Everything. Yes, I think that is correct. For the receivables ledger control account, if we've got any sales invoices, and I'll fill this in as we go. So any sales invoices go on that side. What about the next one? The customers paid some money. Spot on. Yes, seen that straight away in the chat. Yeah. If a customer pays money, it reduces the balance on the account. So any, I'll put it as receipts because that's the correct terminology, but money received from customers would reduce the balance on the account and therefore would be a credit. So they've got that wrong. What about the credit note? What do we think on that one? Have they posted that on the right side? They haven't. Yeah, well done picking up on that. Yeah, if you think about it, we can't debit for a sales invoice and debit for a credit note because they do opposite things. So if they've done a debit for the sales invoice and that's correct, which we said it was, the credit note being a debit is wrong. Yeah, so we'll put credit notes on that side as well. So that they would need to have debited for the sales invoice, which they've done, then credit for the payment and the sales credit note. So well done on that, because I think that's quite, it's a bit of a weird one, that one, to get your head around. When I was looking at this earlier, just around myself with the question, I thought, oh yeah, that is a bit of a strange one. So just got one more to have a look at. Oh, let me just, where's my mouse gone? There we go. It says, where's it gone? I'll get onto the next page, but it won't let me. Do it that way. There we go. Right, we've got one last bit here to do. And we've got some definitions here. So select the correct definition of an overpayment. So I'll number these up so it's easier rather than you having to say. So the first one says, what's the definition of overpayment? Where a customer has paid more than the amount detailed on the remittance advice note, or a difference between the amount paid by a customer and the amount detailed on the remittance advice note from that customer. A customer has paid a lower amount than the amount detailed on the remittance advice note. So what do we think? Which one of those is an overpayment? This one's a little bit tricky, really, because of the wording. I've got one vote for the first one. Any disagreements? Anything? Yeah, we're quite happy with number one. Yeah, I agree as well. An overpayment is where it says maybe more than the amount detailed on the remittance advice note, but it could be that they've also paid more than the balance on their receivables ledger account. So a bit like the opposite way round to what we had on the part A question, where we were working out all those different bits and bobs. So that is your task 4. I don't think that's too bad. Yeah, any worries on that? Anyone thinking, oh my gosh, that's awful, I couldn't do that? But there were some really good answers in the chat, so I'm hoping that you sort of thought that was okay. So I'm just going to pop, where am I back to my holding like that, but my mouse is dying. There we go. Right, let me pull it onto the second page. So thank you very much for attending the session tonight. I hope it was useful. If you've got any questions, our email address is there. It's aaatrevision@firstintuition.co.uk. And yeah, we'll hopefully see you next week for some more on introduction to bookkeeping. But yeah, have a good evening and we'll see you soon.